All right, Django here. The goal is to help men have a red pill frame in mating dating and avoid getting MGTOW'd. Today's topic is about the 3 stages of a man's sexual life. One of the most important things to understand in a man's sex life is where he's at in his body's production of testosterone. Now, I know that there are testosterone replacement therapies, and I don't have a lot of knowledge about that. I assume I will seek it out at a certain point. A lot of red pill guys seem to be a fan of it. But assuming that you're going to follow your body's natural decrease in testosterone, which is a 1% decrease on average every year after the age of 30. Assuming that that is the arc that all of us will take, I believe that there are 3 stages of a man's sex life. The first one is what Eddie Murphy refers to in his special Delirious as the fuck years. This is when a man has his peak amount of testosterone, and frankly, he should use it. I don't agree with the MGTOW people that are telling young men to swear off women at this phase of life. A lot of these MGTOW gentlemen are elder statesmen. It's easy for them to say that. There's a couple problems with this. One, there's something in a man's nature where he needs to have his character tempered by what is called the game. I don't believe a man can be fully formed if he hasn't spent a period of time when he was pursuing women and fucking. And it's a thing where almost all of these MGTOW guys talk about this period of life where they were chasing tail and how they regretted it and how it was such a waste of time. And you know what? Of course they're all going to say that now. Their testosterone is at 85%, 75% of what it was when they were in their prime years. And they're in a different kind of prime. I'm going to get to that. That's the point of this video. But in the prime testosterone producing years of his life. So it does bother me that a lot of these people, frankly, don't seem to remember what it was like to be 27, what it was like to be 23. How much of your thought life is uncontrollably focused on the female body. In this phase, which I would say starts at puberty and goes until age 30, a man doesn't have a lot of competency, and he is trying to do the best he can to get as much sex as he can. I think the 80-20 rule applies the most here as far as there's going to be your, quote, natural hot guys that are going to have the sex with the majority of the women. And a man's focus in this point of time should just be to embrace it. Embrace wherever he's at and the fact that he doesn't have competence with women or in the world. And that is the fate of a man. A young woman's life is that she gets the lottery winnings paid up front. And in a conventional man's life, the lottery winnings are paid in increments and arguably increase with time. And so patience is the number one most important thing in phase 1 here, in what Eddie Murphy calls his fuck years. Now, I think when Eddie Murphy recorded the Delirious special that's from, he was probably in his late 20s, and obviously he was already famous too. So he truly gets to be in those years. Now, if he were even 5 years younger, he wouldn't have a fraction of the access that he had at the point he was filming that. But again, what he did in those young years is he focused, I'm certain, single-handedly on fulfilling that desire. Was living... I bet if you asked Eddie Murphy now if he thought that was a waste of time, he would say yes, it was. But at the same time, a man with that level of desire at that age basically has 2 choices. You can utilize it to build yourself up and build your world, or you can suppress it and douse it. You can use the sex dolls. You can go to pornography. But the problem is, then you enter a later stage of life and you're not benefiting from having built something in the former stage. So it's not ideal. In fact, it's foolish. I will say that my personal philosophy is that those sorts of escapist suppression devices, the pornography and whatnot, should be minimized if at all possible, because most of what built the world, most of what wrote the great rock and roll songs was young men's swagger, young men's bravado, young men's desire to get laid from attractive women. And without that motivation, there would not be that achievement. I believe it's part of the reason why millennials are so underachieving and so underwhelming as a generation. Millennials came of age with internet pornography. And that single influence douses a man's motivation to do and achieve anything in the world more than any other possible factor. It's a thing that's not talked about on a wide scale, but to me is as plain as day. Millennials, they have access to a 24/7 harem that kings of old could not fathom, and they're incredibly underwhelming as a generation. Now, there's a lot of other factors here, and I'm not going to go into those right now, but I will say that I believe for a successful phase one of a man's sexual years, there needs to be an embracing of horniness and a channeling of it. The discipline and the focus and the patience need to really only be focused on a few things. One is taking that horniness and using it for quote, game. Learning whatever your game is going to be, and everyone can have game. If you play an instrument, that can be game. If you're into nerdier stuff, that can be game. What I believe every man can have game, and to optimize what they have to work with. I'm also not going to focus on those strategies here. The internet is full of them. But the other factor is to focus on the fact and believe this truth that is almost inconceivable when you're a young person, that you will turn 30 and that the majority of your life is still to come. And so you are building those years, and you want them to be good for what they're going to be. And the things to focus on are, yes, achieving competency with women. Yes, you should focus on being the hottest version of yourself in this phase of time. You should be going to the gym. You should be hitting your macros in the gym. You should be doing all those things, because so few men are that it's a tremendous opportunity for you to do that. It's not actually that hard to be one of these well, it is hard, but it's simple to be one of these exceptional men in this phase of time. And the other thing is, when you're 23 or 24, you still have to keep in mind that like in 4 years, you'll be in your late 20s and you can crush it with women that are in your age bracket when you're there. Even at 23, 24, most men, you still don't really have access to the hotties that you've seen come of age since they were in high school. But you need to keep focused on your late 20s. That's when Eddie Murphy said that, what I believe is just a profound statement. Yo, I'm in my fuck years. And he accurately diagnosed where he was at in his sexual arc. Now, how do you know when you're entering what I call phase 2, which I would say happens at about 30? And statistically, again, this is when a man's testosterone starts to dip incrementally year by year until he dies. How do you know when you're changing phases? Well, it is when you stop thinking about sex constantly. It's when you stop thinking about it all day long. Now, I've only lived my life in the years before this. I'm just entering into this phase. I'm coming out the other side of phase 1, but I can say that there are some days when sex is all I think about. And there are other days when I can focus all day long on what I'm doing, not watch porn, not have to release anything, and not think about sex. And the truth is, the lion's share of the time, I prefer the second kind of days. When I was in phase 1, the desire was just too strong. And I'm young enough now to remember still what that's like. And I think a lot of these older MGTOW guys just don't remember. They don't wake up that horny. They have lost the ability to, if they wanted to, masturbate 5 times a day. But an average man in his 20s can and does do that. The desire is that strong. And so now that we're in phase 2, I'm able to focus all day long and not be tortured by my libido, not have to rub one out to just focus on anything tangible at all. I'm more effective at managing my time, focus, energy than I've ever been, and it's awesome. Now, I understand it won't stay like this forever. Nothing will stay like how it is for very long. That is the nature of the living universe. So how would one spend his time in phase 2? Obviously, it is in doubling down on his value, doubling down on his career. And at this point, I think that a man can start doing hobbies that are really only accessible to a man who's got a few things figured out. It's when you can hopefully start to acquire a nice car if that's fun to you. It's when, if you play music, you can buy some nice gear. It's when you can acquire some toys. But I believe the best hobbies to do in this phase, and in phase 1 for the most part, it's applicable to both, are the peacocking hobbies. It is playing in a band. Even if it's not good, most people don't have a clue nowadays what's good and what's not at music. Like if you just play guitar at all, especially for women, it's just hot. Most women cannot tell the difference between some shred lord, your Eddie Van Halen's, and the guy in the street corner strumming chords out of key, playing American Pie. To most women, those are identical. They both are capable of playing the guitar, and that's it. Anyways, I think playing music, lifting weights, doing sports, these are the peacocking hobbies, things that make you hot. It's still important to do these here, and particularly you have an ability to do the things like having a nice car that just weren't accessible to you before you had made more of a way in the world. Obviously, this is the point where a man should be maxing out his earning potential and doing it looking forward gleefully to phase 3. Now, I'm going to get to phase 3 here. But a man should essentially be already anticipating at this phase that his body will start to fail him. So another way that manifests is that he should be doing the physical things that he enjoys while he still can. Because there will come a point when the body starts to break down, even for as well as you take care of it, and obviously the goal should be to take care of it. But there will be a point when you can't climb mountains and you can't lift heavy weights to really have the built-out frame that you might enjoy. And frankly, that will make you desirable. This is the time to enjoy the health of your body and take care of it and do the hot adult hobbies that you can. But I believe that the focus here should be continuing to treat your dick as a business. A business needs 2 things for profit. 1 is a quality product, and 2 is good marketing. So the hot guy hobbies that you would be doing here and doing in phase 1 are increasing both of those things. Now, the hobbies that are not worth doing in these phases are the ones that do not increase conventional, quote, peacocking. I'll get to those later, but basically all the nerd activities unless they're done competitively and at a high level, are not going to make you hotter. Now, there are exceptions to this, and so obviously if you're confident in that, go for it. But what I'm talking about is the things like binge watching shows. I don't know why anyone would be binge watching shows in their prime. So you spent all this time in your life not being competent, not having a clue about most things. Women was probably one of them, if you're an average guy. Now you know a lot more. Now you've went through this phase of experiencing game, realizing women's true nature, and realizing how you can add value to them. Now you're in your prime earning years. So now it's time to enjoy being the ones picked by hypergamy instead of ignored. Now you get to be both focused, not completely ruled by your dick, and you still have that drive. You know who you are. You know your place in the world. You have more competency. You have more ability to execute. You're young enough that you can still take action, but you're old enough that the action isn't unfettered and uncentered. You're focused. It's a great time, and it's literally just being in your prime, enjoying your prime for what it is. And in this place too, you can still smash if you keep yourself up. But I'm going to move on now to phase 3. Because in a sense, I think the best is yet to come when you get to phase 3. And this is what I would call the weird old dude phase. It doesn't really matter who you are. At a certain point, in my estimation, this is probably about 60 for a healthy man in reasonable shape, you are old. You are out of touch, and truly weird stuff is starting to happen to your body. There's nothing you can do about it. No woman in her 20s will touch your pee-wee unless you pay her. That could be through one-time exchanges or through an age gap provider, older Hugh Hefner, sugar daddy, husband thing. So committed or non-committed, no one in her 20s, no woman in her 20s will touch your pee-wee at this point. Now, you might be able to get with and attract good-looking MILFs, women in their 40s, but at the same time, those women, if they want to, are probably in their, as Rollo would call it, epiphany cougar phase. So they actually are going to have still plenty of sexual access, not like it was when they were younger, but they're probably not going to be stoked about an age gap relationship. And I think especially as we see the millennial women age, they are going to embrace cougardom to a degree that we have not yet fathomed. And so that means if you're an older man and you're even shooting for a 10-year age gap relationship, I think at that point it will be in a man's life, especially as millennial men get older, and this generation of, for the most part, very sexually liberal women come of age, I just don't think it's going to be really that worth it. There's not going to be a lot of prime tail out there. So the best case scenario is to be with women in their 40s. But that's not what any of us would universally prefer. Men universally prefer 23-year-olds. So even if you have plenty of money, you're probably not going to do much better than a 10-year age gap. Physically, you'll have about 2/3 of the testosterone you did at 28. You're not going to have the same desire. And here is where I believe that MGTOW is the ideal. But not before. This is when you have no chance of being hot. Before you have a chance, you actually have a tremendous chance. The internet makes it so that you are able to learn anything that you want to better yourself. You can and should avail yourself to that in full when you're in your prime or when you're approaching it. But here is where you can stop trying. There is now no more point. There is no more point of chasing, and you don't even feel like it anymore. So yes, exercise should still be, your health should still be prioritized, but in a taking care of your health sense. There should be no more heavy lifting here. You should be doing yoga, and you should be, eating, and you should be, jogging, doing light weights. But you should give up on being hot at this point. In phase 3, this is when you should be binge watching TV shows. This is when you get to garden. This is when you get to play video games. This is when you get to have drone battles. This is when you get to watch all the porn and not worry about it decreasing your sex drive. It just doesn't matter anymore. None of it matters. This is when you're reading novels. This is when you're studying esoteric topics. This is when you're going to Comic-Con in cosplay. This is when you're doing gourmet cooking, puzzles, building models, playing poker, going back to school for liberal arts, anything nerdy and not physically taxing. Now, I believe the thing to do in phase 1 or phase 2 is to have a list of things that you're looking forward to in phase 3. So every time I start to do a phase 3 activity in phase 2, which I've just entered, I stop and I add it to the list. I add it to my phase 3 list. And it does a couple things. It motivates me to want to get to phase 3. It means I'm motivated to want to handle my financial situation. I'm motivated to want to take care of myself because I've got a lot of things I'm looking forward to. But more importantly, it also is preventative against that depression that you can start to face in middle age when you realize that your old age is coming. Because you've got so much to look forward to. You've given yourself a lot to look forward to. It's when you can finally be done with the taxing components of your life and hopefully start to enjoy things more. And I believe this is what ideally retirement should be. No man should truly retire. We're all probably familiar with that. But this is when you're retiring from needing to work and you get to go full-time into doing nerd shit. And we all have our ways that we like being nerdy. Maybe it's studying sports scores or that other list that I just rattled off. But that's when the time is to do this. So I'm going to summarize. The arc of a man's sexual life should be this. Spend phase 1 getting hot. Phase 2 is for being hot, maintaining and doubling down on it. It's for being in your prime, and it's for planning for being old. So the being old is something great to look forward to because you have all this stuff you've been waiting to do. And phase 3 is on giving up on being hot and having a blast being a weird old dude. So I think one of the problems with men today is not knowing which stage they're in. The age to be a gamer is not 25. It's not 45. It's 65. The age to be a competitive athlete isn't phase 3. It's probably not phase 2. It's phase 1. The phase to take a bunch of risk financially and try and get rich isn't phase 3. It's phase 1. Possibly phase 2, etc., etc., etc. When you're thinking about life like this, I believe it's exciting. I believe it's the most exciting way to integrate red pill awareness, MGTOW sentiments, and your overwhelming sex drive as a young man. Each phase has things to look forward to. It has pluses and it has minuses. But doing the wrong activities relative to life phase makes the other life phases less ideal. All right, that's it for today. Please like, subscribe, support. Thanks.